My name is Neville. I'm an alcoholic. Sure, it's been quite a journey. I suppose, let me just, like I always say, I was, born up in that average dysfunctional family. Mom alcoholic, father, as he was a bit of a hard man. Didn't show much love and affection, and that was something I was always looking for. And I could never get it from my parents. So I remember the first, few years of my life, I was basically brought up by my grandmother. Whenever things got a little difficult at home, I always was told about it. I don't even think, I think I was still in nappies, but knew how to work the phone, and I would phone my grand to come pick me up whenever I got trouble at home. And I suppose that was the first way of running away from my problems. That's how it all started. I was born in Durban, landed up moving to Joburg when I was in grade 1. And I did my schooling, or I tried to do my schooling up in Joburg. I discovered I had dyslexia, so schooling, I ended up going to remedial schools, and I was never very good at school. I couldn't study, I couldn't read. Writing was shocking, still is, and so I gave up. Where my father always used to try and push me, and I would just back away, and I was always trying to do something else other than my schoolwork. So I started smoking at a young age. We didn't live in a good area. Then my father got sick with brain tumors and things like that, and we ended up moving out of the area basically I'd grown up in, and to go to high school in a new area. And I remember just I was completely unhappy. I would bunk school. I remember the first term in this new school, I think I was 30 something days absent in the first term. That's an average of going to school twice a week. And that's how it, and basically I caught up into, the wrong crowd. Meanwhile, I think I was the wrong crowd, just looking for. And I remember going to a party, and, I never got drunk before, but I had a few sips of a cider here and there with my mom. And I remember going to this party and drinking 2 neat glasses of brandy and downing both of them. And I was wasted. I was vomiting. I had alcohol poisoning for a week afterwards. But one thing I remember, and I remember it distinctly to this day, I was completely not me. And, lying in bed, not being able to I had to lie on my side, not being able to lie on my back because my tummy was so sore. And all I wanted to do was get drunk again. And that's, and from that point, if I drank to get completely wasted. There was no gray area, it wasn't tipsy. No, I drank to get drunk. If I could puke, I would, and that's how it all started, and quickly my progress just went chaotic. I was smoking weed, I was, drinking, and the whole, rave scene started, and I found, started finding drugs and, new ways of just not being me anymore. And I soon, dropped out of school, started, that wheeling and dealing, and eventually, my whole life fell apart in Joburg, and I was kicked out of home, back at home, kicked out of home, and eventually I had to leave Joburg because of, cops and, really bad crowd, and I thought, what? Joburg's the problem. Let me go somewhere else where I don't have Joburg. So I decided to move down to Cape Town because it was I wouldn't have any problems down there because I hear the people are different. And truth Bob, I moved down to Cape Town. Only problem is I went with, and my life started there again. Drinking. I think I was there, 2 days, and I was drinking to blackout already. And I moved in with my uncle. He was a full-blown alcoholic. I only met the guy like twice in my life. I had no idea. And that's it, drinking all the time. Started working in hotels. I mean, I worked hard. I always would like to say I was a functioning drunk, But wherever I worked, I could make sure it was like a social event. So I went into the restaurant industry, always being able to drink after work. And life was always about the party, and it carried on. And I moved to Cape Town in, 96? And for 13 years, I was just, when I was down there, was just one party after another. Life, long relationships, but they would never last because they would want to settle down and be, like normal. And I would be like, I would want to drink every night and, always smoking weed and wanting to do drugs and for some reason I would always try to get into a relationship where the girl was completely different to what I was like. She'll be a prim and proper, going to university, and I would be a high school dropout who was a complete alcoholic and would like to use drugs whenever he could. And so that carried on. I tried to get normal jobs. I remember trying to become an IT technician, and I mean that was a disaster. I would sit in an office in front of a computer screen, and I'm really like, trying to focus on what's going on, and it never work. So eventually I left that, went back into the restaurant game, where I could party, because that's all I wanted to do, and that's all I knew what was doing. I mean, I knew how to do it, and I could do it properly. I remember my whole life I would always be blaming my parents on everything. I drank because my mom drank. I used drugs because my dad was never there. And when I was I always forget to share this, when I was about 16, I remember having a fight at home, and it was about school and me bunking, and and I was like, I blamed my parents, and I stormed out of the house, and I walked up to some friends' houses. Our dad was part of this, like a little cult that was going on, and it was like all weird stuff. And I remember being at these people's house, screaming about my parents, and my mom pitching up there drunk, and they were having a huge fight, and she turned around and she told me that I was adopted. And so I found out I was adopted, and that just fueled everything. I remember from that point, all I wanted to do was get as high and get as drunk, and just, I didn't care about life. I remember being like, I think 16, 17, and not thinking I would make it to 21, and then making it to 21 and saying, I'll never live longer than 25. And this is how life went on, I didn't care about myself. I didn't care about the people around me. And all I wanted to do was get drunk and high and eventually die, and that's what it was. And so, life went on. I was living in Cape Town, and I started working at this bar where it suited my lifestyle to a T. I would wake up at 3, 4 o'clock in the afternoon, go down to work. It was socially acceptable to start drinking as soon as I got there. And, smoke weed or evening, get at night time, start doing harder drugs, and carrying on and just being the life of the party, and it was amazing. I did that on and off for 10 years. With that, I had remember at one stage I thought it was getting a bit rough, so I would leave and I would go somewhere else, and life would just carry on the same way as it was there. I remember even decided to go work on the cruise ships, and I decided, what, I'm not allowed drinking on the cruise ships. I'll never get drugs on the cruise ships. I remember, I think my first night there, I blacked out. And it was a mess. Eventually, this is when I started realizing God was watching me. I used to smuggle cocaine onto the cruise ships, so me and my friends could, use. And it was, I mean, you get busted with something like that. I mean, they throw the book at you. And eventually I got fired from the cruise ships, drunk on duty. And, I was very depressed about that. And I remember going back to, being back in South Africa, and, life was, back in the same restaurants. And, I knew now that when that happened, because I could have done well on the cruise ships, but I knew my drinking had eventually now, then I started to lose things. And I think my disease at that point, it was now starting to really, things were falling apart. I remember coming back to South Africa. I got involved in a relationship. At this time, I decided to pick someone who was just like me. This girl drank like me, she used drugs like me, and it was a mess. And I tried to fix her. And this was my whole object of this relationship, because she was like my mom, and I wasn't going to be like this. And I don't know how long I dated her for. It's all a bit of a blur, but I mean, things got really rough. I remember, I think the last year or two, I'd been kicked out of flats, taken to court for not paying rents. And I think I came into treatment in 2010. So I think in 2009, my grandmother had passed away, and she had left me some inheritance. And I don't remember how much it was, but I think it was like 100 and something thousand rand. And that got paid out in the December, or around there somewhere. And I had this money, and I partied. Hey, it was a party every night. The drugs in my life had progressed to everything and anything, and as much as I can of it. It's drinking. What I decided to do was pay rent for like 6 months in advance. But I was living in this shithole of a place. I mean, when it rained, the water would run down the walls. The skirtings was rotting. And I remember one day I was thinking, this is what my life's become. And I decided to try get this girl that I was dating into a treatment center. And she refused to go. And I remember saying, you know what? If you're not going to go, I'll go. But I mean, I had no idea what to do. And I just remember waking up one morning, and this was when the wheels started turning for me. I remember waking up, and I just wanted to die. I remember dropping to my knees out of my bed and asking God for me just to not wake up. I just wanted to die. I had no guts to commit suicide. I just didn't want what was around me anymore. And I remember dropping to my knees and saying, you know what, God, please let me just die, or let something happen for me for this to all stop. And it was crazy. The guy that he was a silent partner in this bar that I was running. He's friends with Keith. And I didn't know that, but he'd been saying to bosses, this guy needs help. And I was told to go speak to him. And eventually I tried to have a conversation with Keith, and I remember, I don't know if any of you have spoken to Keith on the phone. It's two different languages. And I was just like, okay, whatever. I didn't know, And I remember the ball being put into, it started rolling for me to come into treatment. I mean, I had money. I had spent about 60% of the money that my grandmother had given me in 8 months as I came in here. And with money I had left, I decided to book myself into treatment. I remember, slowing the thing down, because I didn't know what to do. So I put my stuff in storage at my friend's house, and I remember Brian kept on saying, "You coming?" Yeah, I'm coming. He goes, "Come now." Eventually I booked an air flight from Cape Town to Durban. I arrived at the airport. Rob picked me up, and I remember falling asleep in this car, and I woke up and we were going through the dude over here, and I was thinking, what's going on? What am I getting myself into? I honestly had no idea. I know my mom had gone to AA once or twice, and she didn't stop drinking, so I didn't think that worked. And basically, and I arrived here on the 3rd of August, and the 4th of August was my first day clean, and that was, I like to call that the day that I was reborn, because life changed completely, you know. My life today, I would have never imagined it was possible, you know. The treatment was, I loved it, you know. People say they hate coming out. I honestly loved every minute of it, because I hated the life that I was living. And anything compared to that was amazing, you know. And so, you know, life started. It was 3 months in treatment, and then 9 months in the halfway house. Along the trip, you know, there was 4 of us moved into the halfway house at the same time. So it was an awesome, like, little gang of us. I like to call it, we were just doing meetings. I remember my first year of recovery was recovery, you know. Sometimes there was like 4 or 5 meetings in Scotland. We did all of them. Then we were like on a Friday, then we'll do Craigieburn. And then from there we'll go to Durban meeting. I mean, we just did recovery, and it was amazing. You know, I got a job at the Steers, just was working the till there. And life was really, really simple. And I'm actually so grateful for that, because it gave me an awesome foundation, you know, in my recovery, which has been a blessing. And this little town that we live in, I like to say there's more recovering addicts per square kilometer than I've ever even heard of. People come here and they're like, wow, you know. I remember if I was in a mess or couldn't get hold of my sponsor, I would stand outside the stairs and someone from the rooms would walk past. I'll just stand there and wait. And as they walk past, I'll be like, yeah, man, blah, blah, blah. And they'd be like, and they would always be sharing their experience. You know, the gym was upstairs. I mean, Don would be walking past and, you know, talk to him. And there would always be somebody, you know, around. And this town was like, this was a blessing. And, I mean, I left treatment and I had nowhere to go. So I just decided to stay here. And, you know, that's when I remember just letting go and letting God, and this is what happened, you know. I didn't fight the journey, I just went with it. Throughout that time, I met my wife. You know, it's not recommended that you start dating within the first year. They really should up that to about 2 years. Because, and you know, we see why. It's like, I mean, it was difficult in the beginning, you know. Trying to, you know, your first year is all recovery, then your second year you're trying to, it's like suddenly the real world's out there. I mean, one of my greatest things I had to discover, first big discovery, was that not everybody has a program. There's people out there that, you know, don't believe the spiritual principles, and they are rude, and they will call you names for no reason, and these are things that I had to discover. I remember my first confrontation was with one of the bosses I had, or a manager. And I remember walking up and down the parking lot at the mall on my phone to my sponsor going, and she's just so fucking rude, and going off like this. And I couldn't believe how someone could speak to me like that, but I was in recovery. And I had to realize it's, you know, it's about me, it's what I do, and it's about how I react to people. And, you know, and that's one of the blessings is like, the way I used to be and used to react to people is like, oh, that person was nasty to me, I would go use and drink, and now I have to work a program around that. And that's what, you know, I did. Things went well with there. Eventually I became manager, started, you know, working my way up. I landed up, Candace and I, we landed up moving in together, and we were living together a few years, Candace, and then Candace's daughter came to live with us, Chloe. And I'd never been a father. Sure, I could barely look after myself up to recovery. I used to, you know, they used to go through, I used to bath maybe once a week. And yeah, this man suddenly, you know, I think a year and a half, clean, and he has a little daughter. You know, she was 3.5 somewhere, and sure, it was an experience, but one of the most amazing things that ever happened to me. You know, I was now responsible for someone else's life, you know, and I always didn't want to be like my parents. And yeah, I got this program so I would never have to drink like my mother, and I could always calm my temper, and never used to get it right all the time, but you know, at least I could try, and I could have a program. And you know, life went on, you know, it's rapidly then, because I suddenly realized, you know, I went from, you know, recovery then into a relationship, and I discovered my relationship became my fix. And Don used to always talk about, you know, it's all like a pink cloud in the beginning, and then those clouds are part, and then a little thunder shower starts coming. And I'm telling you now, it was difficult, you know, because where at the beginning it was the things you do in a relationship, and it's like, oh no, she left a towel there, it's all cute. After 1 year later, I'm not saying you leave your towel, I'm just, it's like suddenly that irritates me, and this irritates me, and you know, I suppose it's difficult dating at 80 because you take each other's inventory, and it doesn't work, eh? That's what they got sponsored, and that's what you got to sponsor. But it was difficult. It was a really difficult time, and you know, but working this program is, it's like, this program really is a blessing. It's like, I would have never been able to do any of the stuff that I've got to at this point without it. So we dated, I think we got engaged, and we've been married just on 2 years. Yeah. And you know, things have, sometimes it went very quickly, and things got a little bit like overwhelming, but everything always worked out the way it should. I'm a really strong believer in God's plan, not mine. Whenever I would try and take the wheel of what I was doing, I would land up in the bush somewhere. But if I let go and let God, everything always worked out okay. And after a year of being married, we fell pregnant, and we've had a little baby boy. It's like, it's blessings after blessings. I mean, I've got you know, Chloe, and we've got a little Carter now. He's 8 months now, and you know, it's been an amazing time. It's, you know, it's a very eye-opening experience. I've discovered that I am a very selfish person, and I hate it when my world gets interrupted with the way things are. And I hate change. And, you know, kids change your life, that is for sure. I thought Chloe was, you know, some change. Now Carter's along, and it takes the sleep away. Things are difficult at times, but it's an amazing experience. And you know, things have really gone, you know, rough at some points, but it's always okay. And that's what this program has always been given me. It's like, everything will be okay as long as I do this. And you know, sometimes I do this half-heartedly, and things start falling apart a little bit. But I know whenever I put everything I have into this program, and this way of life that I have now, you know, things work out. And it's been an amazing journey. I've lost some friends to this disease over the years, you know, people that decided, you know, that this program wasn't for them, and it's difficult at times, you know. We've had people die, people just go back out there, and I want, recovery for everybody. If I could have a wish, that's what I would wish for, because it's the way of life I have now is amazing. And yeah, things happen that doesn't always go as well as I want them to. And I always like to say that a shit day in recovery beats any day I had back when I was using, because there's a solution. And as long as I keep on doing this, everything will be okay. That's all I have to really say. Thanks for letting me share.